Welcome to Forbidden Desires channel. We hope you will have fun with us. Enjoy watching. Have you ever trusted someone so deeply, so completely that you never once imagined they'd be the ones to make you question everything? Not because they lied. Not because they hurt you in some obvious way, but because of an offer, one that left you staring at your reflection, wondering who you really were. That's what happened to me, and it changed everything. Isla was my best friend. She knew my story, my pain, my silence. She was there after the divorce when most people weren't. She showed up, she checked in, she made me laugh again. And her husband Archie, he was kind, respectful, careful with his words. He never gave me a reason to doubt him. We were close, but not that close. At least that's what I thought. I was lonely, not just the kind of lonely where you wish someone would call. It was deeper than that. It was the kind of lonely where you start to forget what warmth feels like, what it feels like to be seen, really seen without pity. And Isla and Archie, they made me feel seen again. I thought they just wanted to help. They invited me over for dinner, for drinks, for weekend getaways. I thought it was friendship. I thought it was kindness. I thought it was love, this safe kind, but they didn't just want to help. They wanted me. I didn't understand it at first, not really. Started small glances that lasted a little too long, words that felt a little too intimate, a touch on the arm that lingered. I brushed it off, told myself I was imagining things, but I wasn't. Then came the night when Isla looked me straight in the eye and said something I never expected. And in that moment, everything shifted. I wish I could say I walked away. I didn't, because when you've been starved of connection for so long, even the most complicated offer can feel like salvation. Even when you know deep down it's not. This story isn't simple. It's not black and white. It's about trust, desire, and the space between right and wrong where the heart doesn't always listen to reason. If you've ever found yourself caught between loyalty and longing, if you've ever felt the way of wanting something, you know you shouldn't stay with me. This story isn't just about what happened. It's about what led to it, the signs I missed, the emotions I ignored, the way love and longing can twist themselves into something unrecognizable. If you're not careful and if you're new here, welcome to Forbidden Desires, where we tell true stories that peel back the layers of love, betrayal, and everything in between. If you enjoy stories that challenge moral boundaries and unravel raw emotions, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button if you've ever felt torn between what's right and what your heart was screaming for, and leave me a comment because I know I'm not the only one who's been here now. Let me tell you everything from the beginning. I was in my late 30s. Recently divorced, no kids, no pets, just silence and an apartment that echoed a little too much. When I closed the door behind me at night, there was a numbness. I didn't talk about a quiet kind that settled into my bones, not sadness exactly, but something heavier. I'd wake up, go through the motions, smile when I was supposed to, not in the right places, but inside I was just floating, unattached, half awake. The divorce hadn't been explosive. It wasn't dramatic or filled with screaming matches. It was more like erosion, slow, quiet. One day I looked across the dinner table and realized I was sitting next to someone who had stopped seeing me a long time ago, and I had stopped trying to be seen after it was finalized. People checked in for a while, then they drifted as people do. Life moved on for them, but for me, time felt slower. Lonelier, I go days without speaking to anyone outside of work. That's when Isla stepped back in. She'd always been there in one way or another. We met in college, instantly clicked. She was the warm kind, the type who always had an extra blanket ready, who brought soup when you were sick, who remembered tiny details about your life that even you forgot. We'd gone years without being as close, but after the divorce she started calling again, dropping by, inviting me over for dinner. First I thought it was pity, but she never made me feel like a burden. She made me feel like a friend, like I mattered again. She and Archie lived just a few blocks away in one of those cozy homes, with wind chimes on the porch and lavender by the mailbox. I started going over on weekends, wine nights, movie marathons, backyard BBS with soft music playing from the kitchen and fairy lights strung through the trees. It felt like family in a way I hadn't had in years. Archie was always there too. He was quieter than Isla. More measured, the kind of man who didn't waste words, but he was attentive in a way that caught you off guard. He remembered how I liked my coffee. He asked about my new job not just once but weeks later, like he'd really listened. He laughed at my doctor jokes. Even when Isla didn't, it was subtle the way he paid attention, but it was constant. First, I told myself he was just a good guy. They seemed like a happy couple, comfortable, the kind of marriage where they finish each other's sentences and bicker over movie choices. In that familiar, well-worn way, they touched, often shared looks across the table. Isla would nudge him playfully, and he'd roll his eyes and smirk like it was a dance they'd done for years. I never once thought there was something beneath that until I started noticing small things at first. A glance from Archie that held just a second longer than it should have, a compliment that felt a bit too personal, not over the line but not far from it either. Then there were Isla's questions, oddly curious ones like, "Do you ever get lonely at night? Or have you been on any dates yet? You're too beautiful to be alone." I'd laugh them off, changed the subject, but they kept coming. One night, after too many glasses of wine, Isla looked at me across the table and said, "I'm so glad you have us. I don't want you to feel like you're on your own anymore. We've got you." And the way Archie nodded, the way his eyes held mine across the candlelight, felt like something else was being said, something I didn't understand yet. I kept going back though, because the house felt warm, because I didn't want to be in my apartment with its silent walls and empty bed, because they made me feel like I belonged. But beneath the warmth, I started to feel something else, creeping in, something quiet and charged, like walking into a room where everyone stops talking, like a sentence that ends too soon, like a secret that's hanging just above your head, waiting to drop. And still I went back. 'Cause it's hard to say no to comfort when you've gone without it for so long, even when it starts to come with shadows. It was a Friday night, one of those warm, lazy evenings where the air smells like grass and wine and the world feels softer. For a little while, Isla had made her famous lemon herb chicken. Archie grilled vegetables out back. I brought over a bottle of red I couldn't afford, but I didn't care. They made me feel like I belonged somewhere again, and that was worth a bottle of anything. We ate out on the patio under the string lights they'd hung last summer, the soft hum of cicadas in the distance, just playing low from a speaker near the door. I remember thinking, this feels good. This feels normal, and for a while it really did. We were three people who knew each other, who laughed easily, who shared the kind of comfort that usually takes years to build. There was something sacred about it, familiar, almost innocent, until it wasn't. Isla poured another round of wine, deep red and heavy, in our glasses, and we settled into that post-dinner haze where conversations start to wander. The candles flickered, the sky above us turned deep navy. Then, just casually, Isla turned to me with that warm smile she always wore and said, "Do you ever get lonely?" I laughed, tried to play it off, said something about how it's nice to have the bed to yourself sometimes, but she just kept looking at me. "I mean really lonely," she said. "At night when no one's around." Archie was quiet, but I could feel his eyes on me, that same calm, unreadable look he always had, except this time there was something behind it, still focused. I didn't know how to answer because, yes, I was lonely, deeply, achingly. But it wasn't something I wanted to admit out loud, not in that moment, not in front of them. I took a sip of wine instead. Isla leaned in a little, her voice soft, like she was sharing a secret, "If you ever need company." I looked up. She smiled again, but this time there was something different in it. Archie and I were very open-minded. I froze just for a second. Then I laughed, a nervous, tight sound. I shook my head like it was a joke, like I'd misheard her or she was just messing around. But when I looked at her, she wasn't laughing. Neither was Archie. He was still watching me, still silent, still holding that unreadable expression. But now I saw it, the intention behind it, the stillness of someone waiting for your response. And in that moment something shifted, the air changed, the warmth around the table dimmed, the soft music suddenly felt too loud. I tried to play it off. I made a joke about needing more wine. I got up, went inside to pretend I was checking my phone, anything to escape that heavy, lingering silence. When I came back out, they were talking about something else just like that. The moment was gone, but I couldn't unheard it. I couldn't unfeel the way Isla had looked at me or the way Archie hadn't said a word, but his silence spoke volumes. We said our good nights not long after I hugged them both. Maybe a little too fast, a little too tightly. My hands were shaking by the time I got to my car. I drove home with the windows down, trying to breathe in the night air like it could clear my head. I told myself I'd misunderstood, that maybe it was just wine talking, a joke that didn't land right, a weird moment that would pass. But when I got home, I saw it. A message from Archie, just 3 words, Yuoka. And I knew then I hadn't misunderstood anything. I stared at that message on my screen longer than I want to admit. Okay, just 3 words, but they cracked something open. I must have typed out 6 different replies, backspaced every single one. My fingers hovered over the keyboard while my mind spun in curves. Was this a trap? A test. Was Isla sitting beside him while he sent it? Was she watching my every move, waiting to see what I do? I felt sick, but not because I didn't like it, because I did, and that terrified me. I ended up replying something simple. Yeah, I'm good, just tired, no emoji, no punctuation. I wanted it to seem casual, cold, like I wasn't shaken, but I was. I couldn't sleep. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, fans spinning slow circles above me, wondering how I got here. I told myself I hadn't done anything wrong, that nothing happened, that it was just an awkward moment, fueled by wine and bad judgment. But deep down I knew better, because it wasn't just that night. It was the slow build-up, the glances, the closeness, the way Isla had started hugging me a little longer lately, holding on just a second more than necessary. The way Archie would place his hand on my lower back when passing behind me, like it meant nothing, but it didn't feel like nothing. I started replaying every interaction. Every little moment that might have been innocent or might have been something more like the time. Isla said, "You're glowing lately. Divorce looks good on you." Or when Archie brushed against my hand while reaching for the wine glass and didn't pull away, just left his fingers there, grazing mine, eyes on mine. Silent. I kept thinking, was I imagining this, or had something been unfolding all along and I just didn't want to see it? It made me feel exposed, wanted in a way I hadn't felt in years, but also guilty, confused, like I was floating outside my body, watching myself cross a line. I didn't know how to erase. And then came the rationalizations. I wasn't married anymore, I wasn't cheating on anyone, I was alone. They were the ones who made the offer, right? I wasn't doing anything, not yet, but I was thinking, I was wondering, I was letting the thought live longer than it should have in the back of my mind. And that's what scared me. Because once he let a thought like that settle, it starts to make itself at home. I'd walk into their house and suddenly notice how Archie's eyes followed me, how Isla would ask if I was dating yet and tilt her head in that curious, knowing way. It was subtle, so subtle that if I brought it up to anyone, they'd think I was reading too much into it. But I wasn't. One night I had a dream, vivid, electric, and confusing. We were at their house, Archie's hands on my waist, Isla behind me, whispering in my ear. Felt surreal and soft and wrong and warm and terrifying. I woke up sweating, heart racing. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. The next morning I kept telling myself, it's just a dream. It's just a tension. Doesn't mean anything, but it did, because I kept thinking about it. And then a few days later, Isla called. Her voice was light, cheerful, like nothing had shifted, like everything was the same. "We're going up to the lake house next weekend," she said. "Just us, just the 3 of us. You should come." I froze, she said. So casually, so effortlessly. But there was a silence after her words that held too much weight. Just the 3 of us. I wanted to say no. I wanted to say I was busy, had plans, couldn't make it. But what came out instead was, "Yeah, sure, sounds fun." And just like that, the line I hadn't meant to cross got one step closer. The lake house was even more beautiful than I remembered. Nestled by the water, surrounded by tall pines and silence, it felt like a place where time stretched differently. No traffic, no neighbors, no distractions, just stillness, the kind of stillness that makes you hear your own thoughts a little too clearly. Isla greeted me at the door with a tight hug. Archie smiled, that quiet smile of his, the one that gave nothing away and everything at once. The house smelled like cedarwood and wine. There was soft jazz playing again, low and familiar, and a fire already crackling in the stone fireplace. Everything about it felt warm, too warm. Dinner was simple: roast chicken, grilled corn, a salad that tasted like summer. We ate out on the deck with the lake reflecting the moonlight and the trees swaying just slightly in the evening breeze. It should have felt peaceful, but underneath the laughter, the clicking glasses, the stories, was a hum, a low, steady hum of something else. Through dinner we stayed out there, wrapped in blankets, sipping wine. Isla sat next to me on the lounge chair, her leg brushing mine. Archie sat across from us, his eyes flicking between us in that same quiet, unreadable way. At one point, Isla reached for my hand, just held it. No words. Her thumb traced slow circles across the back of mine. I didn't pull away. I didn't know why. Maybe I didn't want to. She looked at me and said, "You seem lighter here, happier." I tried to answer, but I could feel the heat creeping up my neck. Later inside, Archie offered to massage my shoulders, said. I looked tense. I froze at first, but Isla was right there, smiling softly like it was the most natural thing in the world. She said, "He's really good at it." Trust me, and I did. I sat on the floor in front of the couch while he sat behind me, hands on my shoulders, strong, gentle, patient. He moved slowly, pressing into the knots with care. Isla sat across from us, curled up with her glass of wine, watching. She didn't look jealous. She didn't look worried. She looked pleased. We talked for hours after that, the kind of late-night talk that feels like peeling back layers. You didn't even know you had confessionals, vulnerabilities. Archie asked me, "Have you ever thought about being with more than one person? Emotionally?" The room went quiet for a moment. Isla didn't flinch, she just looked at me, her gaze steady, her expression open. I didn't know how to respond. I gave a nervous laugh, said something about how I could barely handle one person at a time. But they didn't laugh. They just watched me. It was intoxicating the way they looked at me, the way I felt like I was the center of something bigger than myself, wanted, not just physically but emotionally. Seen, desired, and it terrified me because I didn't know who I was in this story anymore. I wasn't the broken divorce, just trying to rebuild. I wasn't the third wheel. I wasn't the observer. I was in it. Whatever it was. Isla leaned toward me and said, "I think there's something here between us, all of us, and I don't think it's wrong to explore it if it's honest, if it's real." Her voice was soft, non-threatening, but every word felt like it echoed off the walls and landed somewhere deep inside me. I didn't answer. I just stared at the fire. The way the flames danced and twisted like they were alive. I stood up suddenly and said I needed some air. My heart was racing, my skin felt too tight. I stepped outside, barefoot on the deck, though would cool beneath me. The night air sharp in my lungs. I tried to calm myself, tried to make sense of what was happening, and then I heard the door open behind me. Archie stepped out, quiet, calm. He didn't say anything at first, just stood beside me looking out at the lake. Then he said, "Isla loves you, in her own way, and I think I do too." I turned to him, heart pounding in my ears, unsure if I'd even heard him right. But he just looked at me like he meant every word. I stood there on the deck. Every part of me taut, suspended between breath and stillness. Archie's words hung in the air like fog. "Isla loves you, and I think I do too." I didn't know how to hold that. Didn't feel like some twisted seduction. It didn't feel like manipulation. Felt true, soft, honest, dangerous. I looked at him, really looked at him. His eyes weren't lustful. They were open, unafraid. There was no smirk, no playful glint, just something tender and terribly, painfully complicated. I wanted to say something, anything, but nothing came. I was frozen, my body still, my heart frantic. I was standing on a ledge, wind at my back. Knowing I was about to fall and not knowing if anyone would catch me. Archie stepped closer slowly, like he was asking permission with every breath. Then he kissed me. It was soft, hesitant, not a kiss of conquest, but one of caution, curiosity, a whisper against my skin rather than a shout. And I didn't pull away. I couldn't. I wasn't even sure I wanted to. His hand moved to the side of my face, holding me there like he was afraid I'd disappear like this. Whatever this was meant something more than just desire. But before I could process it, I heard the door again. Isla. She stepped out quietly, barefoot like me, eyes already on us. But there was no anger in her face, no jealousy, just calm. She didn't speak. She didn't ask why she didn't stop us. Instead, she walked over and stood beside me so close, our shoulders touched. I turned to her, not knowing what I'd find, but she smiled. A sad, strange smile that made my C*** ache. She reached for my hand, intertwined her fingers with mine, then leaned her head gently against my shoulder. Archie stayed on the other side of me. And we stood there. The three of us wrapped in silence and night air and the kind of closeness that doesn't have a name. No one spoke. No one had to. I felt breath, his, hers, mine, all uneven and shallow. I felt the weight of eyes that weren't judging, weren't pressuring, just seeing. And for the first time in years I felt seen, not pitted, not dismissed, not just tolerated, seen. But the moment didn't feel like freedom. It felt like a trap, a beautiful golden trap disguised as affection, because as much as it felt good, it also felt like stepping into something I could never walk back out of. My heart was full and heavy, my body still tinged from his touch, her closeness, the electric confusion between us. But in the quiet underneath it all, something inside me whispered, this isn't love, not really. This is something else, something dangerous, something that could never stay hidden forever, something that would change everything it touched. And yet I didn't move. Not yet. When I got back home, everything felt colder, not just my apartment, the air itself, the walls, my skin, even my thoughts. It was like the warmth of that weekend evaporated the moment I crossed my threshold, and all I was left with was silence. I dropped my bag by the door, still unpacked, and sat on the couch in the dark. I didn't even turn the lights on. I just sat there, let the quiet wrap around me like a question. I didn't know how to answer. The next morning, Isla texted me. Hope you got home safe. Simple. Sweet, normal. Too normal. Archie didn't text at all, not that day, not the next. Isla sent a few more messages, short ones, casual, like everything that happened between us hadn't really happened, or like it had but didn't mean anything. And that's what messed with my head. Had it meant something to them, to him, to her? Or was I just caught in the middle of something I was never really a part of? Kept asking myself. Was I a game to them? Some experiment? A fantasy they played out to feel alive again, because it sure as hell hadn't felt that way to me. It had felt real. It had felt like the first time in years that someone had touched me, not just my skin, but something deeper, something raw and aching and buried. But now Archie was distant. Isla was polite and I was spiraling. I started avoiding them. Ignored texts, turned down dinner invites, made excuses. I didn't know how to show up and pretend nothing had happened. And honestly, I didn't know what they expected from me. Either did they regret it, were they embarrassed, or were they just waiting for me to come back to say something to make the next move? I didn't know. Then came the neighborhood barbecue, one of those sunny, perfect Sunday where everyone's grilling burgers and pretending life is easy, kids running around, music playing low from someone's speaker, conversations about lawn care and vacation plans. And there they were. Isla waved when I walked in. But she didn't come over. Archie nodded from across the yard, one of those distant, obligatory nods, the kind you give a stranger on the sidewalk. They barely looked at me. After that, I stood there, plate in hand, surrounded by friendly faces and small talk, and I felt invisible, like I didn't belong to that world anymore, like whatever had happened up at that lake house had peeled me away from who I used to be. And maybe it had, because everything felt different. Now I ruined everything, or maybe I was never really part of it to begin with. Maybe I was just temporary, a placeholder, a thrill. That night when I got home, I finally opened my phone and stared at our old group chat. I hovered over Isla's name for a long time before closing it again. Then it came a message from her, just 3 words. "We need boundaries." That was it, no greeting, no explanation, no emotion. And with those 3 words, everything that had felt so warm, so intimate, so confusingly tender, turned to ice after Melissa's message, "We need boundaries." I stared at my phone until the screen dimmed. I didn't reply what was there to say. I wasn't even sure what boundaries meant anymore because the lines had already been crossed and I wasn't sure who crossed them first for days after. I couldn't stop asking myself. The same question: was I manipulated, or worse, did I manipulate them? Did I walk into that space with open wounds, hoping anyone would reach out and hold me no matter what it cost? Or did they see those wounds and take advantage of them? I didn't know. Maybe none of us really knew what we were doing, but I knew how it felt after, like I'd been left standing in the middle of a storm. That wasn't mine, holding pieces that didn't belong to me, watching them both walk away like none of it had ever happened. I felt abandoned again. Only this time it was worse, because for a brief moment I felt whole. I felt wanted. And when that's taken away, not because someone stopped loving you, but because they never really did, cuts deeper. I tried dating after that just to feel something, to move on. I met a man at work. Sweet Safe said all the right things. We went to dinner. He held the door open. He asked about my childhood. He laughed at my jokes, but I felt nothing. I smiled. I nodded, I played the part. But inside I was numb. Everything felt dull, like eating a meal without taste, because after the lake house after them, I realized I wasn't just missing companionship. I was chasing that intensity, that edge, that impossible, dangerous warmth that made me feel alive, and nothing else came close. Sla and Archie faded after that, the texts stopped, the invitations disappeared. First it was subtle, like they were just busy, then it turned into polite Helios at the grocery store, half smiles at community events, a nod, a wave, nothing more. The warmth was gone, the closeness vanished like it had been scrubbed clean, like I had never meant anything at all, and that's the part that stuck with me because I still missed them, both of them, not just the feelings or the kisses or the nights by the fire. I missed the version of me they made come alive. I missed the feeling of being needed, desired, pulled into something bigger than myself, but it was never real and deep down. I think I always knew that. Weeks later, Sla and I finally spoke, not in person, not face to face, just a message she wrote. It was a mistake. I thought I could handle it, but I'm not as strong as I thought, and I just stared at the words. She didn't blame me. She didn't apologize either, just a quiet acknowledgement that what happened shouldn't have. And maybe that was her way of closing the door. Maybe she needed it shut before it burned down everything else. But for me it was already ash. Looking back now, I understand something I didn't before. Love without rules isn't freedom. It's chaos disguised as passion. It pulls you in with promises of connection, of meaning, of breaking boundaries for something bigger. But in the end, all it leaves you with is ruin and a silence that no one dares to fill. Have you ever been offered something that felt too good to be true, something wrapped in comfort, attention, and the illusion of safety? Or maybe you've crossed a line, not because you're reckless, not because you're selfish, but because for one moment you just wanted to feel alive again. What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have pulled away? Said no, stayed safe? Or would you have stepped in like I did? And just hoped that maybe it would turn into something real, because I didn't plan for any of it. I didn't expect to feel what I felt, and I sure didn't expect to be left with silence after such a loud, tangled kind of intimacy. So now I'm asking you, was I wrong? Were they? I want to know what you think. 'Cause stories like mine don't come with easy answers. Leave a comment below. Be honest, be kind, or don't just say something, because pretending it never happened doesn't make it go away. And if you've ever stood at the edge of something that challenged who you thought you were, if you've ever felt torn between the safety of rules and the pull of desire, then maybe you understand more than you think. Like this video, subscribe. This space, Shocking Infidelity Saga, is where we tell the truths no one else wants to admit, where we say the quiet parts out loud, where we ask the hard questions not to get answers but to feel a little less alone. We all crave connection, that pull, that ache, that human need to feel seen, wanted, loved. But sometimes the people we trust most, they're the ones who shake our sense of right and wrong to the core. And what starts as comfort becomes confusion. What starts as warmth turns to something darker, something heavy. I thought I was walking toward healing. I thought I was stepping into something real. But in the end, just because someone opens a door doesn't mean you have to walk through. My story ends here. If you feel that this story is meaningful and brings useful lessons, please like and subscribe to the channel to support me. Thanks for